What would have happened if Jesus hadn't died? A question that shakes both faith and history. Because the cross is not a simple fact of the past. The cross is the center of the Christian faith, the place where the history of God and humanity meet. But, if that moment had never arrived, what would our faith be like? What would our world be like? The unfinished prophecies. The Old Testament had sown the expectation of a Messiah. Isaiah spoke of a suffering servant. The psalmist described pierced hands and feet. Daniel prophesied an anointed one who would be cut off. If Jesus had not died, those prophecies would remain open, like unfinished puzzle pieces. The people of Israel would continue to wait for another Savior. And Jesus would remain only as a brilliant teacher, but not as the Lamb who takes away the sin of the world. An unattainable salvation. The Bible teaches that the wages of sin is death. The old temple sacrificial system was only a shadow, a constant reminder of our separation from God. If Jesus doesn't die, that circle is never broken. The altars would remain lit. Animal blood would continue to flow. And humanity, generation after generation, would bear the weight of its guilt, seeking forgiveness in rituals that could never cleanse the heart. No resurrection, no hope. The resurrection only makes sense because there was death. If there is no cross, there is no empty tomb. And if there is no empty tomb, death remains unconquered. Christianity would be reduced to a manual of moral advice. Do good. Forgive your enemy. Give to the poor what you have. Beautiful, yes. But it would be no different from other ancient philosophies. The difference of Christianity is not only in its teachings, but in the power of the resurrection. The discouraged disciples. What moved simple men, fishermen, tax collectors, peasants, to preach until they died? It wasn't just Jesus' words. It was seeing him crucified, and then seeing him alive. If he had not died, he would not have been resurrected either. The disciples would have ended up returning to their jobs, with good memories in their hearts, but without the fire that changed the world. There would be no Gospels, there would be no apostolic letters, there would be no churches in Rome, in Ephesus, in Antioch. The movement would have died out with the natural death of its master. Christianity shaped the world. Without the cross, the Roman Empire would continue in its pagan religion. Europe would not know cathedrals, sacred music, art inspired by Christ. The monasteries that preserved knowledge for centuries would never have existed. The cross, a symbol of hope, would never have marked history. And beyond art, the values that seem universal today would perhaps never have been sown with such force. Forgiveness to the enemy. The dignity of every human being, regardless of their condition. Love for the poor, the orphan, the stranger. Without the cross, the world would still be harsher, more violent, more divided. The deepest thing is not in the story, but in the soul. With the cross, God drew closer to man. With the cross, the veil of the temple was torn and access to the divine presence was opened. But without the cross, God would still be distant. An implacable judge, not a close father. Man would live under the law, trying to fulfill impossible commandments, always with the feeling that it is never enough. True love is measured in dedication. And on the cross, God gave up the most valuable thing, His own Son. If Jesus does not die, the message remains incomplete. It remains in pretty words, but not in redemption. It remains in philosophy, but not in salvation. Grace, that word that changed history, would never have shone in all its glory. Judaism would still be waiting for the Messiah. Islam would see Jesus as just another prophet, but never as a redeemer. The world's religions would continue to present paths based on human efforts. Do good deeds, perform rituals, achieve merit. But none would have the power of grace. Without the cross, humanity would live in an eternal do-or-die situation. With the cross, everything changed to believe and you will receive. Let's imagine a universe without a cross. Christmas would be meaningless, because a birth without sacrifice does not fulfill its purpose. Easter would never exist, because without resurrection there is no victory. The church would never have emerged, and millions of people would never have heard the message of divine love. The world would be different. The story would be different. And the human heart would remain empty. Clapperboard conclusion. What would have happened if Jesus had not died? The answer is clear. Sin would continue to reign. Death would still be the last word. History would know no hope. But Jesus did die. And yes, he did rise again. That's why there is forgiveness. That's why there is hope. That is why the cross, a symbol of pain, became the greatest sign of love. The real question isn't what would have happened if he hadn't died. The real question is, what are you going to do with the one who did die and rise again for you?